Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live panel series France versus Silicon Valley. Our topic today is workplace transformation. My name is Anne-Emmanuelle. I'm the Executive Director of the French-American Chamber of Commerce in San Francisco. We are partnering with the French business magazine Challenge, represented by its editor-in-chief, Gilles Fontaine, who will be moderating this discussion. Before we start, I'd like to extend our thank you to Bank of the West and the Franco-American Benevolent Society, sponsors of this event. So, of course, when we talk about workplace transformation, we immediately think about COVID and how we've all had to adapt to work patterns, new work patterns in the last 2 years. And now that the majority of employees has been working remotely for some time, they have different expectations for what they want their work experience and their workplace to be and to look like in the future. But really, there's more to it. And workplace transformation had started even before the pandemic, if we think about it. Over the past 20 years, much of our process-oriented work has been outsourced or automated, and the work we need to accomplish today is more complex and highly collaborative. To understand some of the shifts that are taking place and how companies are adapting, we're extremely lucky today to have 3 amazing speakers. So Joël Barbier, Director Customer Zero at Cisco IT, Laurie du Boullay, Head of Culture at Dataiku, and Alexandre Fretti, Managing Director at Malt. A usual final word for those who follow us regularly, but everybody's on mute. You're more than welcome to ask your questions through the chat, and Gilles will relay them during the discussion. Gilles, you're on.
Hello. Thank you very much, Anne-Emmanuelle. It's great to have you for this fourth session, I guess, of this second season and first session in 2022. On the future of work, we had this quite the same session. It was interesting to have, another guy from Cisco attending this panel. We had another quite a famous speaker last year on this very same theme, John Chambers. It was ex-CEO of Cisco chatting with Paul Hermelin. And I'm sure we'll have a great moment, all four of us this time. Maybe we'll start with a little presentation from you three. We'll start maybe with you, Laurie. Just saying, you have the talent in the US to create, to name, very annoying, have very annoying names for your positions, right? You're head of culture, and Joël is head of customer zero. Maybe you could start by, I don't understand. Alexandre is directeur général. That's we get that. He's the chef, right? He's the chief. So what does head of culture do at Dataiku? By the way, we're very proud of Dataiku in France. You were one of our very first unicorns, very successful French startup, not a startup anymore, but great company. So please, Laurie, explain what the head of culture is.
Well, first, Gilles, thank you so much for having me tonight. And thank you for your kind words, of course, for Dataiku. We are also very proud of our French roots, so thank you for that. Maybe our job title is something that we need to cover in this talk tonight about transformation and the need for new position that might not have existed 10 or 15 years ago. So that's a good segue into what we wanted to discuss, right? But for the people who do not know Dataiku, Dataiku is a platform that allows knowledge worker and IT professional, as well as any information worker, really, in a company, to access what we call the everyday AI. So that's the possibility to create a platform that is very open and very collaborative and enable most people at company to be able to contribute, understand AI, and being able to create solutions thanks to this. To get back to your prior question about what does a head of culture do, I'm in charge of the company culture at Dataiku. making sure that as we scale and grow, we can keep that culture of kindness and openness alive at Dataiku, which I guess, as you can imagine, in a hyper-scale startup phase is a real challenge. And more specifically, I'm also in charge of our CSR team, diversity and inclusion, and learning and development.
That's interesting because when you talk about, we'll get to that later, but when you talk about more and more remote working, having people working in different at home from home, and how do you build a corporate culture? That would be very interesting to have a word from yourself and from Joël, and probably also from Alexandre, because he also had to deal with that. Joël, so what is the customer zero? What does that mean exactly, and what do you do?
Well, good morning, good evening, Gilles. Customer zero is really the innovation arm in Cisco's information technology organization, and so the idea is to take our own innovations, our new solutions, and deploy them in our own environment well before they're commercialized for our customers. And so customer zero and feedback to our engineering teams, to our business entities, and helping them improve the solutions and accelerate time to value for our customers. What does that mean? We're essentially Cisco's largest and best customers. And so it gives us a chance to actually deploy our own technology and our innovations in our production environment and immediately provide feedback to the R&D engineers to prioritize things that are of greater value for us. And there is a few other customer zero functions in other technology companies like Intel, but it is something fairly new for Cisco.
All right, very clear. Thank you, Joël. Alexandre, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes. Well,
from Paris.
from Paris.
You're part of it was quite a change during that pandemic era, and we saw a lot of people making the choice of changing life, especially in the IT environment, where people decided to work on their own and become freelance. So
Yeah.
Of course, Malt was already there before the COVID, but in a way, this whole thing accelerated the movement, right? The trend.
Yeah, completely true. So very quickly, Malt is an open marketplace that connects the best talent in the market. So we are present in France, Spain, Germany, Belgium, and Netherlands right now. With some of the clients, we have more than 20,000 clients, 85% of the CAC 40 in France, and so we have a good view on what's going on the market. And I think the major change we faced in the last two years, and I think it's obvious, and you talked already about it. It's a remote topic, and what we see today, and according to the BCG, nowadays on the white collars guys, 63% of the people want to work remotely, almost 3 days a week right now. So it's a major trend, major transformation for every company in the world, either Malt, Cisco, or Dataiku, I think. The second aspect we've seen during the pandemic is the fact that people are requiring more autonomy. And I would say that the last step of having more autonomy is becoming a freelancer. So that's a trend we've seen as well. And some of the people on the market right now, I think they understood that they want a client more than a boss. And it's something very relevant as well right now. And maybe last but not least, I like to do a parallel between what we've seen on the market economy and a parallel with the working environment. I think 15 years ago, we've all discovered the benefit from the sharing economy. On the goods, right now you own less and less your car, your flat, etc. And we came from a possession economy to a usage economy. And on the working market, at the end of the day, it's exactly the same. We are moving from a wage employment economy, a full-time employee economy, and you can make a link between this economy and the possession, because a permanent contract is a kind of social possession, and we are moving from this social possession to a more on-demand economy, and the on-demand economy is the same as the usage economy in the goods economy. And just two figures to finish on that one. If you look at the percentage of the workers that are independents right now, it's 33% in the US and it's 10% in Europe. So clearly the US are ahead of Europe. It's not, I think, something original, but it's clear on that one.
So it's still very low in France, and I guess it's the same, quite the same in Europe. In the in the other European countries.
Yeah. I think you can see a minor difference between the pay in the north that are closer to the US figures and the pay in the south that are far away from the US figures.
And we're talking really about people. I mean, these are structural changes in their lives, right? People that it's not just working remotely 3 days a week because the French government decided that we had to stay at home for 3 days. It's really, freelance profiles, right?
Yeah. Clearly freelance profile, yeah.
Laurie, you have teams on both sides of the Atlantic, right? So how do you see those things evolve and change over how did you see the things evolve over the past 2 years?
So Dataiku actually has teams pretty much all around the world by now.
How many countries?
It's a good question, and it depends if we're talking about, are we incorporated? Do we have a presence there? Do we have employees working from there? So I'd rather not give you a number that is not the right one, to be
really
quite
employees.
honest.
I mean, really,
So we are at 900 employees across the world, with employee based in the US, in Canada, in France, in the UK, in the Netherlands, in Australia. We are also have offices in Asia. So we have a lot of presence already, a lot of ground to cover, and certainly hoping for more in the years to come. But we also have sometimes workers working remotely as well. And I think we also need to recognize that all those transformations are much more easier for all the workers that are primarily capable of doing their job remotely, right? There is also huge part of the industry that do not have access to maybe the convenience that we have today. Dataiku is part of one of those companies where remote work was already possible before the pandemic. Is suitable for almost most of the job that we have. So for us, of course, that transition is a little bit more smooth, if I dare to say. We also, of course, still continue to evolve in our work practices. Some employees have made life-changing choices, and the pandemic actually got them to aspire to a different life, and they relocated during the pandemic, which is a change that we gladly help to make when we can for our employee. So we might even have to open offices in some location where the takers are moving to sometimes. And we've also solidified something that wasn't the case before, which is a work from anywhere policy, where employee can spend some weeks during the year working from anywhere they would like in the world, providing, of course, that the legislation allows and that they are able to do so.
So is there a trend where you see employees, staying home more, and maybe 3 days a week, like we mentioned with what's happening now in France? Besides the obligation, the legal obligation of French companies now, is that a trend now?
So I think at Dataiku we try to think about this holistically, thinking that different Dataikers have different needs also of accommodation. So surprisingly enough, we serve a wide range of needs, from actually people who crave interaction and, of course, when the conditions are possible, would be willing to come to the office 5 times a week, to some workers that are fully remote. And we are trying to create frameworks that would allow most Dataikers to actually being able to choose and work the work organization that works best for them. Of course, we have a special attention for young workers, because your integration into a company, your first job, I think, is determinant to a long-term success. So this is something that we look forward to actually follow very closely. And up to now, unfortunately, most of the companies that have been operating fully remote, GitLab being one of them, were traditionally not necessarily hiring worker right out of school. So we have very little background and possibility to survey work practices, even though GitLab today is the biggest organization in the world working fully remote. They have 1,300 employees, I believe. So this system is completely possible. But I think we're still in that phase where we experiment, and we all have to recognize that I think we're going to still learn through this process for the months and the years to come.
Thank you, Laurie. Joël, what did you learn from what happened over these past 2 years at Cisco's office and headquarters, and how did things evolve?
Well, having to work remotely is nothing new for us, right? So
I imagine.
we started doing this more than 20 years ago, and Cisco had started to offer flexibility for people to start working. What really changed is that in a matter of a few days, we had to accommodate on an average week 20 to 30% of our workforce being remote, to every single person being remote. And to be honest, in the last 21 months, I have not been back in the office.
Oh my God!
To pick up some of my things, and so we didn't know initially if all the processes that we had already largely digitized would actually work. Some things like doing the quarterly financial close. The first one was something that we weren't completely sure we could do it completely virtually, but it did work. Everything, and today everything has been working with people remote, at least in the US, in California. In some areas of the world, like Korea or Singapore, people or in Sydney, people have been able to come back to the office. But as far as we're concerned, we're still at a distance. Preferences have changed tremendously. So before the pandemic, about half of the people wanted flexibility and half wanted to be in the office most of the time. Today, I think 98% of our employees want that hybrid work, that flexibility. There is no reason, if you're going to do individual work, there's no reason to be in the office. You can be more effective at home. And so we're building our technology to make that possible for people to work anytime, anywhere, any device securely. The other thing that's changed really is an increased focus on inclusion and participation. So when you have some people in the office and some people remote, this hybrid kind of work, it's actually hard on people. Some are isolated. There is an incredible tension between the desire to go back to the office and socialize, to overcome the loneliness of the work, and the desire to have flexibility and to be able to work remotely. So how does that work? It's very complicated. And as you mentioned earlier, there is new rituals, there is new ways to work. Our workday has actually extended. So as far as I'm concerned, my work spans over about 14 hours.
14 hours, my God. What time? When do you sleep? When do you eat?
Well, but that's precisely it. Over these 14 hours, not every day may actually be busy. I remember, years ago, I was briefing a customer in Europe, and they said, remote work doesn't work. People are going to be doing their laundry. And indeed, people will be doing their laundry,
Yeah.
but then they will come back to work. And
Uh-huh.
what we've seen is actually an incredible increase in people productivity.
So in these 14 hours, you mean there's probably you do your laundry, you do the kitchen, you take care of the kids, you have some sports time. That's part of the package, right? You wake up at 7 o'clock, start to work, read your emails, that make a quick break, and then you go back to work. It's just, is that the way it goes? And is that the particular
Exactly.
the standard working day of a Cisco worker?
Well, I happen to have a global team, and
Yeah.
so my situation is maybe a bit different. Some people who work in one time zone and do a transactional job may have a more normal workday.
Mm.
But as far as I'm concerned, I need to be up early in the morning to work with Europe and the East Coast, and I need to be up at night working with Asia. And so in the middle of the day, I may have time to, yes, prepare my kids for school, have
Have a
meals.
little nap maybe
Uh,
in the afternoon.
my wife does that. I don't do the siesta, but also do a workout. And there's a
Mm.
big emphasis on making it possible for people to have work-life balance.
Mm. You all mentioned also the importance for the the wellness of the employees. I mean, to still socialize and meet with the colleagues and others, right? I mean, that's also what companies are for, right? I remember Paul Hermelin from Capgemini was saying that you have to take into account that a lot of people only socialize during their working presence, right, at the company, at the coffee machine, or whatever. How do you deal with that, Laurie? Maybe you want to. How do at Dataiku? How do you deal with that in a very fast-growing company?
So it's a very valid point, and we are convinced that in-person collaboration and interaction is very important. Again, we understand that different people have different needs, and we've seen fully remote workers being able to very easily socialize with their colleagues. Some people, I'm one of them, crave interpersonal interaction, and so for them it's completely or very difficult to think about a completely remote solution. We, of course, have systems in the company that I think most tech companies have today, where we have automatic matching of employee who wants to connect to one another. Of course, we are very careful of employee experiences through the life cycle, onboarding being, we think, very, very important to actually create classes of onboarding together, making sure they spend time together, pairing everyone with a buddy who they can go to that is out completely outside of their reporting structure, to be able to build those bonds in the company. And of course, it's also something that all Dataikers have the charge of, which is create that atmosphere of welcoming where people will come and help you. And so greeting newcomers is a big part of our culture and something that we really put the emphasis on.
Thank you, Laurie. Well, I just wanted to add that you may ask. I'm talking to the audience here. Ask your questions anytime, and I will take those questions as they come. Thank you, Alexandre. Of course, you're not Cisco or Dataiku, because your job is to connect companies with freelancers, but you still have to also deal with that, right? You still have some employees, and I remember the very first time we met, it was at your new headquarters in the very center of Paris, brand new headquarters, and employees never went there because you opened this new office just before the lockdown in France, but still they came back, right? And So how do you deal with that? I mean, with the necessity to have people still working probably remotely, but also have them come and meet and see how they're going through this very complicated situation.
Yeah, a bit like I think Cisco and Dataiku for Malt, it was not a tough topic because when you deal with freelancer, I like to say that the freelancers are working like the company of tomorrow. So they were remote before the employees, and so the DNA of the company is remote compliant, I would say. But apart from that, and you mentioned that, we met together with an empty HQ. It was really important for us to have a great HQ and to provoke this serendipity and these contacts that you can have in a HQ. I like to say that.
I think we lost you, Alexandre.
Is better for individual productivity, but it less good to have some creative guys. If you have some sales guys, it's very important to meet together, because even if you feel by yourself when you are remote, when you are doing this Zoom or this virtual meetings, we all feel that it's not completely the same than physical meetings. So as Laurie mentioned for Dataiku, it's very important for us to have physical onboardings for the newcomers. So we ask everybody all over the world to come in Paris and stay 1 week together to bond, to have these informal talks, and we try to have some rituals in the company to be sure that these contacts will remain. I think the limit of that is the fact that we have several populations in the company, and for some of them it's obvious, and for others, like the tech world, the developers, when you spend the major part of your day behind your computer, you don't like to come in the HQ, and I think it's normal. So on our side, the new normal is 3 days at the HQ, 2 days remote, except for the tech guys, and they can do whatever they want.
I see Joel approving. Is that how things are going also at Cisco? And
so first of all, we want to provide people flexibility, so no rules. Every team can actually decide, and we're seeing some of our competitors try to impose some strong views, etc., about when you should be in the office, etc. I think one way to attract and retain talent is actually to provide an attractive workplace where the space is going to be dedicated to every modality of work, every style of working, and this is going to be different. Engineering teams might actually indeed need a little more work for individual work. Sales teams will be more distributed and remote, but we need to build a workplace that is completely flexible to support that work style. And we're allowing people to decide how much they want to work remotely. I mean, this is, of course, something they have to validate with their manager, but no strict guidance. Also, we want to make it flexible for people to decide where they want to locate. And so increasingly, we're putting in place policies that will allow people to move between different locations. And right now, it's hard to attract talent in San Jose, in the Silicon Valley. And so we're hiring in different places like Atlanta. So giving people flexibility to decide where they want to work.
they won't, and they will be working at from home at in Atlanta, right?
There's going to be an office there. Of course, they can come to the office or they can work from home. Yes.
Because I remember Silicon Valley. A few years ago, it was, you needed to attract in order to attract talents. Also another good example of that was Google, who had hired the greatest chefs for the cafeteria. You could sleep there. You could do laundry there. You could it was like a small village. You could do everything from work. And it seems that everything has completely changed, right? It's the end of the office space where you go there and you have your own desk and your own cubicle and you go there and that's the end of it, right? That doesn't exist really in IT in the IT world anymore.
So the thing that changed before the pandemic in most of our offices, 80% of the space was still dedicated to individual work.
Yeah.
Uh, Post-pandemic, we're really redesigning, completely transforming the workplace, and the majority of the work will actually, sorry, the majority of the space will actually be dedicated to collaborative space, not just one size. If you need to brainstorm with a small team, there's a space for that. If you need to meet and greet people, there is space for welcoming people uh, in. And so the space will be divided up between collaboration areas, areas where you can still focus to do some things like head down work, but also large areas for events and customer showcases, as well as welcome areas like lobby areas and amenity spaces where people can actually gather together. So, really diverse space that is going to support all sorts of work styles and modalities.
What we see at Dataiku on top of this is that so the spaces that we traditionally had for quiet time and quiet work are might have to change slightly, because the statistically there's a huge change. You might be on a call at some point in the day with someone who's remote, which is higher than what was happening prior to the pandemic. So we were already lucky to have amazing offices with a lot of space for collaboration. But what I think will change for companies like Dataiku is probably the needs for smaller space for employee to be able to have one-on-one conversation with people that are remote. And that will have an effect on our footprint and our space for sure.
Same for you, Alexandre, I imagine. Is that
Yeah, exactly. We have those phone booths, to have this one-on-one conversation, and it's always full because it was planned before the pandemic, so the ratio was not the good one.
Yes.
And what feedback do you get from your employees? I mean, are they happy with that? Is that what they expected?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, go on. No, I think it's very difficult to answer that question globally because it's very personal, the answer to that question. So on our side, what we do, we measure our NPS, or Net Promoter Score, every year to be sure that we are in line with what is expected, and lots of questions and lots of issues raised are on those topics. The HU, the rhythm of the remote working, etc., etc. So when we have defined the 3 days a week on the office and 2 days remote, and it's not a rule, it's just a guideline. It was based on what the people expected. So we have a regular pace of what is expected, and I think it's the best way to be not the best, but maybe on the heart of what the people expect. The frequency of being in the office or in a remote. What is interesting to see is the fact that nowadays, even with the pandemic in Paris right now, we have lots of people who want to be 5 days a week in the office. So the new normal is having individualization of what we are doing. The only guideline I give as a managing director is to say, okay, for some teams, it's good to have some reunions sometimes for creativity reasons and for serendipity reasons and for informal reasons. And when you have a lunch in Paris with the team, it's different from eating behind your computer, either on the HQ or at home office.
Joel, you wanted to add something on?
The attractiveness of the workplace is really an important aspect of attracting and retaining talent. We found at Cisco that 70% of the people who decided to join Cisco did so because they liked the workplace. And so, we have not figured out everything, but there has been really 20 years of focus on making the workplace much better, and to support workers' effectiveness. So it's workplace transformation supporting workforce transformation.
And I had a very basic question, but how do you rethink the organization of your workspace? I mean, do you hire special people for that? I mean, or is it just an empiric or just you're feeling what's good for you and your employees, or how does that work?
So we have a dedicated function. We call them WPR, workplace resources.
WPR, of course.
And
Workplace.
so,
What does that mean?
workplace resources.
Okay.
And so they're working on actually redesigning the workplace. But that, it's based on informed decisions. So we have, the first thing we do is we ask people what they want to do. It's kind of funny because, 2 years ago, a number of big companies made big statements about their perspective on hybrid work, etc. And, Cisco likes to be a thought leader, but for that time it was really complicated, and so we decided to actually ask our employees, right? We asked people what they preferred, and realized that one size could not fit all. We are also using the Internet of Things, technology capabilities in the workplace to actually measure occupancy. We found that the traditional offices occupancy was very low, right? Traditional offices, on average, will have only about 40% of the locations busy, and so we saw an opportunity to increase the density of the workplace, and that allowed us to save a lot of money to actually reinvest in new capabilities and new geographies where we needed to grow faster.
Laurie?
Yeah, we also have dedicated teams for facilities. This is obviously very important for us, and our way of functioning is fairly the same, but it's something that we started to do at the inception of the company. I think employees are participating in a lot of decisions when it comes to a wide range of subjects, and it's always been a participating exercise where we are not a company that would mandate. We're really here, especially in the people organizations. We are here to serve those employees with the best of our abilities. So it's not about us mandating an office space. It's us designing it to best serve the population that we have.
Yeah, I wanted to relay the Fouad sketch question from the audience. Are you facing difficulties in communication, nationally and internationally? And I would add to that, since I would like to ask that to the head of culture, Laurie, because that's part of your responsibility. How do you preserve? How do you consolidate? How do you build corporate culture when you have your teams all around the world working remotely, not necessarily knowing each other? How do you do that?
So it is actually a very wide question, and I'm going to try to keep it short, right? Because I could talk about this for hours, but it is actually, there is I think a misconception also that the one company culture stays exactly the same. I think the intent and the intention needs to be the same, but with every new country we open, every new Dataiku we onboard, we are actually enriching our culture, and that's how we see it. And we're striving to promote inclusivity and open-mindedness. So, of course, a lot of our work is about bridging those gaps, helping different people understand each other. Definitely having interpersonal connection is part of it. So there is the physical world is important. There is also a big part of our job that is about our process supporting the right positive behavior. do we gather the right feedback at the right time for our teams? And it is, I think, as much as a collective exercise that it is a personal exercise where we are trying to hire and promote Dataikers that are actually showing those cultural competencies, are curious about other people's experience, and trying to build, a company that is welcome for many culture, hopefully. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah,
I
of course.
think
Yeah, that's. I mean, Alexandre and Joël also have to deal with those questions.
I'm sure.
I'm sure. Alexandre, you, of course, your job is to encourage the freelance the freelance status, right? But you also, how do you build a social culture, a corporate culture, and also a culture within your thousand of hundred or tens of thousands freelance that you want, of course you want to attract them, but you want to keep them at Malt, right? You don't want them to go somewhere else. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think it's two different questions, because as you mentioned, we have 300,000 freelancers at Malt, but 300 employees. And for the employees, we have the same difficulties than just Laurie described and mentioned, with the fact that when you have people 100% remote, it's more difficult, to be completely involved and committed and engaged in the culture of the company. But it's something that is not negative for us, because it's a way the freelancers is emerging. Because when you have people 100% remote, it's a good question for the company: is it necessary to have an employee, or can I have a skill as an independent worker? And on our side at Malt, for instance, we don't have any manager 100% remote. We have some people 100% remote, but not for the manager position, because we think that the manager have to embody the culture and have to be the best ambassadors of it. And for the freelancers part, it's a bit different, because they are part of the community of Malt, but they are not employees of Malt. So the idea for us, it's a bit different. It's like when Cisco or Dataiku wants to hire a freelancer, they won't be completely involved in the culture of the company, but they have to have a taste of it, a part of it. And it's very important to select what is important for the freelancer. So when you are a company hiring a freelancer, you have to rethink the way you onboard the freelancer, you offboard the freelancer, your freelancer branding, because you have your employee branding, but you have also your freelancer branding. And I think that the end game of that is the war of talent. So when you are Malt, Dataiku, or Cisco, you want to find the best guys on the market, whatever the legal relationship is. It can be a permanent contract, it can be a freelancer. You just want to have the best, and you have to attract the best. So what has changed in the last 2 years, and Joël mentioned that as well, is the fact that you need to be one of the best employer on the market if you want to attract the best. And being the best employer on the market means, okay, you need to be a great company, etc. You need to have a great culture. It's very important, and you need to have a good and a great HQ. You know that, Gilles, by heart now in Paris, if you are not in the city center, the young guys just don't apply. It's just something that is positive. It's just negative if you are not. So it's very difficult right now to reach the supply and the demand, and yeah, it's that's why it's complicated, but yeah, it's a way it will work, I think, in the near future, because we know that we're gonna lack developers, we're gonna lack sales guys, we're gonna lack a lot of competencies in the near future. So the bargaining power will move from us to the
Exactly. And beyond this, you wanted to add something, Laurie. Sorry.
Yes, because I think Alexandre said something that I think I kind of disagree with. I don't necessarily believe that the future of work is necessarily 100% remote and 100% sole workers. I think there is also a lot of people and employees who are looking forward to have long-term relationship with their employers, who when they have found a place and they like the culture and the people they work with, will gladly take the opportunity to move internally. And it's something that we're trying to promote at Dataiku, is actually to help people also change career if they want to, explore new avenue for growth within the company. And we've had companies staying with us for a very long time and change 4 times job within the company, and in the process being even better, I would say, by gathering perspective from different services, knowing our culture, and being amazing culture ambassadors for other Dataikers. But I don't think there's a one size fits all. And I definitely see that companies like Alexandre are fantastic, because a lot of people, I think, want to make the jump and actually work as a freelancer. And I think it's about time that we can propose this to workers. But I think there's also a place for workers who actually wants to have those long-term relationship with their employers, and possibly still having employees that make their entire career in a company. That still happens.
Alexandre was also saying that the workplace has still a big importance in the employees and candidates choice, right? But beyond that, would you say that the bargain power, as you mentioned, Alexandre, has evolved over the past 2 years, has changed? I mean, bargain power has become between employers and employees.
Yeah, for sure. And just to follow up your point, Laurie, because I think you misunderstood what I was saying, because I completely agree with what you said on my side, on the fact that I'm convinced that there's going to be a balance between the independent guys, the remote guys, and we will still need some employees. At Malt we have 300 employees, and we need employees for the culture, for the deep knowledge of the company, for the long-term commitment, and it's critical. I don't believe in a company of 100% of people remote and independent. What I was saying is the fact that, okay, nowadays in Europe it's 90%, 10%. In the US is 2/3, 1/3, and the trend will be in favor of those guys. So it doesn't mean that it's going to change drastically, but it means that, okay, the trend is there, and we have to tackle that in our companies. And coming back to the bargaining power, and I think we all know that, and that's why we are discussing this topic, and that's why we are changing the HR rules in our companies. It's because the bargaining power has totally changed. Nowadays, either you are an independent or an employee, you have the power. If you have a good skills, you have the power, because there is a shortage of talents everywhere. So if you are a great talent, you know that you can work at Dataiku, at Cisco, or at Malt, and at the end of the day, you can choose. So that's why the location is important. The culture of the company is critical. I have more and more often discussion with candidates talking about the culture, because they know that in the scale-up world, you have some so different cultures. You know, you have the toughest culture, the rocket internet culture, you have the very cool culture, and you have some mixed culture. And the candidates know that, because nowadays in the social medias, you know everything. So you can check the notation on Glassdoor, on everywhere in the social media. So it's critical, I think, to be internally great, because you are just putting some values on a PowerPoint on the walls. Nowadays it doesn't work anymore, because people will know that what is important is the internal NPS of the company. So working on the internal NPS is where we spend the most of our time.
Joel, maybe you wanted to add something.
I wanted to just follow up briefly on Fouad's question. What we've had to do at Cisco is actually increase the frequency of communication from the leadership. And so it used to be every quarter, then it was called the Cisco Beat every month, and now it's every 2 weeks, because people are remote and feel very isolated. And so every 2 weeks, the management, the entire leadership team addresses Cisco people, and instead of making employees travel to meet the management, we make the management travel to be with the employees in regional offices where they can actually come in. So it's very important to keep that connection. About the bargaining power, the fighting for talent is not new in Silicon Valley. I think it's been, you know, the constant since I've arrived here. But the way to create an attractive workplace, it's not just about digital capabilities. It really works when the human resources, and we call them people and communities now at Cisco, the facilities people and the IT people actually work together. And so it starts with making people feel included, promoting social justice, inclusion, participation, uh, as well as building a workplace that aligns and is more relevant to the different work styles. And then you can build the technology to support that hybrid kind of work, and make sure that whether you're in the office or you're remote, you can fully participate in the work. But I have to tell you, I mean, there's some challenges. Time zone differences,
Yeah.
you know, you can never solve that perfectly. So you have to have location strategy rules. Maybe you can have two regions working on a project, but not three, because, you know, if you're trying to bring together California, U.S., East Coast, France, and Asia in one project, it's very difficult.
Yes, I think there's definitely a lot of work to be done, culturally speaking, around asynchronous work, the culture of writing more, because in a remote environment, you actually need to write things more, surprisingly, and also the hierarchy of information to avoid the overload of information that is not relevant to employee. So we are actually actively working on this into trying to solve the problems like this, and making sure that employees have all equal access to information in a way that is structured, and making sure that you level the playing field for employees that are not in a physical space.
We'll take a very last question from our friend Anne-Emmanuelle de Boisson. Do you think this workplace transformation might be creating an even bigger social gap between those who can choose how they want to work and people who work in factories or you know, drivers? And who wants to take the question?
Well, do you want to go, Joël?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that is a challenge, and we're seeing this digital transformation come with both risks and opportunities. So yes, this is definitely a challenge, and that's why we have to work on technology that becomes more affordable. I mean, even if you're a worker who has to be in the office, maybe there is ways to connect with the leadership and be part of a community in other ways. You know, the spirit of trying to have our leadership communicate more and more frequently to people who are isolated is actually part of this effort. Um, but once again, I don't think we have all the solutions. There are things that have to stay in person, and you know, we have to do the best we can to accommodate them.
Laurie, you wanted to add something, or you agree?
So
Quickly with Joël.
I think I share the audience concern in the way that we see that in this world, in this post-COVID world, we might see a rise of inequity. I think diversity and inclusion in company is a work that we are trying to strive to make become a reality, and that will also be a great subject for workplace transformation in the years to come.
Thank you, Laurie. Well, I guess it's time to wrap up. I mean, the session had gone so quickly. I mean, I didn't see the time go. So, thank you very much to you three. I would like to also ask Emma to get back on the floor and give her the mot de la fin, as we say in French. Thank you again for your very inspiring thoughts on a thing that really is concerns us all. Not always concerning, but I mean, we really feel that things are going to change for good. I mean, this is a structural. I mean, talking about structural changes. And well, thanks again, Emma. The floor is yours for the last words. If you want to come back, here you are.
Hello again. Well, thank you again, Laurie, Joël, and Alexandre. I guess workplace transformation is a wide topic and it could be discussed for hours and there would still be more to say. But the key takeaway, I think, is that people are now the center of the company. We're really thinking about people first and work around their problematic rather than the opposite. And just before we close, I'd like to thank again our sponsors, Bank of the West and the Franco-American Benevolent Society. And just tell you that our next episode will be on February 2nd. And to some extent, that topic will be the continuity of today's discussion. It's the future of education. And I guess there's a lot to be said about how to prepare the future generations to the work transformation that is happening right now. So see you in about 2-3 weeks. And thank you for joining the live today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye,
you, guys.
everyone.
See you soon.